Hey guys, this is the story of Don Fury Studio. Hope you like it. This is 18 Spring Street in downtown Manhattan, New York, New York. For 20 years, Don Fury Studio cranked out amazing records out of a little basement at 18 Spring Street. And we're going to take you on a tour right now. We'll start the tour with Into Another in 1991, and then we'll turn back the clock to 1987 and tour the studio with Judge, recording their first EP, New York Crew. So let's go back in time. So this is a really great photograph by Catherine Ludwig of Into Another, standing in the stairwell going down to the studio in 1991. That's Pete on the left, and Richie and Drew and Tony on the right. So you didn't have to go into a building to get into the studio. It was right on the sidewalk. So two steel hatches opened up, and they stayed opened up, and then you went down a really short, steep flight of stairs. And the doorway, actually, at the bottom of those stairs going into the studio was only about 5 feet tall and a couple inches, maybe. So you had to crouch over. If you look at the way Richie's standing right there, you can see he's crouched over. So you had to really duck to get into the studio. And a lot of people forgot that on the way out and would crack their head on the steel frame of the hatches. Literally, I'm sometimes, cutting your head open until I put some neoprene over that. And even then, if you hit your head on it on the way out, you were in trouble, man. You felt it for the rest of the day. So when those sidewalk hatches was open, the studio was open, and there were no locks on the studio doors, and you could easily hear the music coming out. So the bands could get out and go to the bodega on the corner for their cigarettes or beer or whatever they needed, and of course, and the bathrooms were up in my house. So they had to come up and use the bathroom. My kids got wise to that after a while and started holding them up for quarters. I remember them trying to take Alan Cage down once, literally. They just tried to jump him when they were about 7 or 8 years old. But anybody could walk into the studio that had a mind to. So, often we'd have people coming down, like drunks off the Bowery would just wander in and sit down on the couch, and, once I came down there and there was a drunk on one of the mics singing with one of the bands. I'm like, hey guys, do you know this person? They're like, no, man, we thought he was your friend. I'm like, get out of here. And we had to constantly watch people because, especially at night, it's a dark, empty hole in the sidewalk. It's a really easy place to go and take a leak. So bums would go down there and take a piss or something, and it would really stink, So the minute you heard any kind of rustling on the staircase, you'd like shout and tell them to get lost, and they'd usually hustle off. There was one time during the San Gennaro festival, which is notorious for not having a lot of bathrooms, at least it was back in the day. And the band had finished rehearsing, whatever. It was stone cold quiet in the studio. And we heard a little rustling on the staircase. It's like me and the whole band are standing in front of the door at the bottom of the stairs, right? So we opened the door, and halfway down the staircase is this girl's rear end turned around. She's getting ready to take a leak right in front of our faces. And the door opens up, the light hits her, and man, she turned into Supergirl, man. She like flew out of that basement staircase, and she was down the block. I mean, we were laughing so hard. So as soon as you walk down those 6 or 7 stairs off the sidewalk and open the door, you're in the control room of Don Fury Studio. There's no hallway, there's no other doors. It's off the street, down the stairs, you're in. That's it. This gives you an idea of how small a control room was. I'm sitting on the couch between Tony and Pete. Richie is sitting in my chair, and you can see the whole control room is probably like 9 feet by 13 feet maximum. It's tiny, like a shoebox. The walls were all painted black with white paint slopped on them, splattered on them, so that you didn't feel too closed in because it was flat black. And everything in the studio was black and white. So we had a couch that I found on the sidewalk we dragged down there, a really small one. And I used to cover it all the time with, fabrics from Canal Street. This one happens to be the exceedingly rare black and white cow print. So Richie's sitting in my chair, and directly next to Richie was where the console and the tape decks were. So let's go take a look, but we're going to skip back a couple of years to 1987. Up until 1987, almost all the recording we did was to cassette. We had done some 4-track recording, including United Blood for Agnostic Front and a few other records. And we did Victim in Pain for Agnostic Front on a rented 16-track machine. But by spring of 1987, I knew I had to make a big move if I wanted to keep up with the bands that were working in my studio. So I literally spent every dollar I had and put in an 8-track setup. So that's a Tascam 38 on the right side of the picture. In the middle, you got a Kelsey 16-channel board. On the left-hand side of that, you got a Tascam half-track machine. And if you look way over on the left, you can see some Dynamite limiters, which aren't even racked up yet, which are pretty cool. I was worried about this, and I thought I was taking a big chance, but my timing couldn't have been any better. The New York hardcore scene was waiting to explode, and it was going to explode right in the basement at 18 Spring Street. In 1987, Judge came in to record their first EP, New York Crew. During the session, they took a roll of photos, which we rescued from a contact sheet, thanks to Mike Judge. So let's hang out with Judge and tour the studio on the New York Crew session. This is such a great photo. That's Porcell on the left, Mike Judge in the middle, Luke Abbey, and Sammy Siegler on the right. We're set up in the middle of the studio to record gang vocals on the New York Crew EP. I think I'm taking the photo because no one else was there. This gives you a pretty good idea what the studio was like. That's the drum bubble on the right-hand side with the drum kit inside. And all the walls were covered in Xerox posters or Xerox flyers in black and white. When I look at this photo and these guys, really, they're not much older than kids, I can't believe it. I can't believe how many records I did with these guys. We're talking Judge, Gorilla Biscuits, Side by Side, Project X, Civ, Youth of Today, Shelter, Rain Porcell, and I'm probably leaving a couple out, I'm sure. I'm always amazed by it. This is a tight shot of the drum bubble with the door on the left. These are the drums that Mike Judge played on the New York Crew session. This kit's been on hundreds of records. It's the only kit I ever had. This is me running a mic wire in front of the baby Marshall. That little Marshall was on so many records you wouldn't believe it. Judge, Gorilla Biscuits, so many. This is Porcell just fooling around for the camera, but I gotta say, he looks like he's really going for it. In the back, you can see me setting up for the New York Crew mix. And another cool shot of Porcell, looking ready for action, sitting in front of the board. And here's a blurry photo of Porcell, Sammy, and Luke on the couch in the control room. If you look to the left, you can just see the edge of the door going to the sidewalk, and it gives you a pretty good idea of how small the control room actually was. So I'm just fooling around for the camera with Luke's hat on. This is definitely the mix session for New York Crew because both the decks have reels on them. Those white pipes over my head were steam pipes, and in the wintertime, they made the studio so hot that we had to run both air conditioners and leave the door open to the street half the time. Let's jump ahead a few years and finish up our tour of the studio in 1994. This is the hardcore door, the door from the control room to the studio. In 1987, when Judge recorded the New York Crew EP, the door was completely bare. No posters on it, no flyers, no nothing. I thought it would be a good place to put up covers of the records that we did at the studio. So before too long, the door got filled up. And if you got on the door before the real estate ran out, you were definitely OG. Some of the band names on that door are Agnostic Front, Gorilla Biscuits, Judge, Madball, Side by Side, Project X, Life's Blood, Wide Awake, Bad Trip, Lunatics, Go, Alone in a Crowd, Helmet, Citizen's Arrest, Quicksand, Shelter, Yuppicide, Sick of It All, Mind Over Matter, Burn, Born Against, 108, Youth of Today, and Underdog. And that's how we got started. That tells you what you need to know about Don Fury Studio. Hope you like the tour. Thanks to all the bands for all the great records over all the years. And now, for 5 seconds, please experience Total Darkness.